Welcome to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the worlds of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, and the rest of the team at Lucasfilm have dreamed up over the past 40 years. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the one and only Dan Z, and I are recording this on Wednesday, August 19th, which, as you were just telling me when we were pre-gaming, your third day back in school, right?
That's right. We had 3 days with just teachers getting our classrooms ready, making sure our desks are socially distanced, trying to plan for remote learners, and it's pretty intense. It's crazy, but I tell you what, I wouldn't have it any other way because this is the way the world is. So I need to accept that, and I have. And as I was just telling you, this is a wonderful challenge for me. I like to reinvent myself as an educator all the time because otherwise, I think you get stale. And if I'm stale, I think the lessons become stale for the students. So I am ready to see what's going to happen. I'm excited.
I love your attitude, and I have to tell you, coming from a family of educators, this is the toughest time of year in a normal school year. Just getting the classroom set back up, new lesson plans, learning, the new kids who are coming to your class. I can't imagine doing this on top of what COVID, how it's tipped the world upside down.
And you want to add some more fun to that? I'm fighting a pretty serious case of poison ivy, too. So we've had quite a week.
Oh, jeez. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
All right. Well, again, it's tail end of summer, and so we are now, Dan, 1 month out from the Primetime Emmys, which will be presented Sunday, September 20th. And as happens during this time of year, especially when you're a show that's had as many nominations as The Mandalorian, your your creative team is out there doing PR. You're out there, glad handing, trying to get folks who are going to vote for the Emmys to pay attention to your show. So, did you see the interview the Hollywood Reporter posted? I think just today with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni.
You know what? I purposely avoided it because I had a feeling we were going to talk about it on the show tonight, and I wanted to just have my immediate fresh reaction. So hit me with it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of standard stuff, but there's some wonderful little bends, little bits of info on it. For example, again, the reporter from the Hollywood Reporter asked Favreau, "Why was the child kept a secret?" And and Favreau explained, "When you're promoting a film, you have to put your best stuff out there for a marketing campaign because you want everybody to show up on that Friday." Whereas television is different. You want to be able to build. You want word of mouth to spread. You want people to tune in and know that something is going to happen that they're going to want to talk about. So he felt that it was very important that to establish right from the get go that there were going to be surprises on this show. On the other hand, Dave Filoni got asked, "Did you know that the child was going to be this big?" And he talked about, to be honest, when they were shooting the show, I mean, everyone was charmed by this character, but in fact, they referred to him as the little guy. But the first person who really clocked that this was going to be bigger than anybody realized was Werner Herzog. We were so focused on just making the show and bringing that character to life, but Werner was like, "This is really magical. This is, this is a big deal." And I think that the best part of the interview was Dave got asked about George Lucas's reaction to the show, and any of us who saw the the Star Wars The Mandalorian Disney Gallery documentary series, they had that footage of George actually on the set of the show. And Filoni talked about, well, he was very complimentary, and I think he's enjoyed the show, and he said once that now he gets to watch Star Wars as a fan and watch it as a viewer.
And he said that for something else. Was it maybe The Force Awakens the first time he saw it? And there was something rather charming about that. And when he said it for The Force Awakens, there's a part of you that felt like, well, gosh, it's a little bittersweet for him. And I think I might be getting that from Bob Iger's autobiography. But for this, you just know that it's authentic and genuine. And obviously the dust has long settled on his selling of his company to Disney, and
Hmm.
it's wonderful, and it's got to feel good for Filoni and Favreau to have their idol and their mentor say, "Hey, I like what you're doing with what I created." I mean, that's got to be magic like nothing else.
Oh, I agree. I agree. But and while we're talking about these Star Wars limited series that are being done for Disney Plus, I don't know if you saw, but they're started to add to the cast of that Rogue One prequel show.
Yes.
Uh, I'm going to mangle this name, and I apologize.
Okay, I have faith in you that you will.
Adria Arjona. Is
I
that
honestly
how
am
I
not
say it?
sure. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, anyway, she's been they have yet to describe her role in the show, which again is has been described as basically a spy thriller that's set in the early days of the rebellion.
And that's very much
But
what the kind of the tone that Cassian Andor is in when we first meet him in Rogue One before he encounters Jyn Erso. So that definitely adds up and explains why he is someone who is fulcrum before
mhm,
Ahsoka, really,
yeah, yeah, no, I that
or after
I
Ahsoka, I guess. Yeah.
I get it. The weird thing is Rogue One has been showing up a lot lately on TNT and TBS, and Dan, I'm almost ashamed to admit this. I will just stop for a minute, to sort of eyeball it and get sucked back in. It really is an entertaining Star Wars film.
It's a top. It's one
Uh,
of the top, probably top 5 or 6 Star Wars films ever made. I think that's fair to say. And quite a few people that I talk with on a regular basis count it as top 2 or 3.
really?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I mean it's unlike anything else, but it's got this wonderful Star Wars edge to it. But it's a lot more sophisticated, I think, in the cost and in the way that it's handled. It's excellent.
Well, I have to admit that's what kind of excites me about Tony Gilroy, who co-wrote the original Rogue One film. He's writing the pilot, and he's going to be directing not only directing multiple episodes of the show, but he's serving as the showrunner. So that sort of hopefully that sort of sophisticated feel will permeate this limited series as well.
Yeah, I'm optimistic.
Okay. Kind of burying the needle in the entirely different direction. Did you see the news this week about the Lego Star Wars holiday special?
I did. I got a press release on that, and I have a feeling it's going to probably be better made and more entertaining than the original holiday special.
But did you notice when it's airing?
Thanksgiving
Um,
time, right?
well, not just Thanksgiving time. It's November 17th. It's the exact same day as the CBS Star Wars holiday special back in 78.
Oh, you got to love that. That's great.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That is not a
Of
coincidence.
course not.
That's somebody who I mean, again, typically new Disney stuff drops on Fridays, but it's just sort of like, oh, that's too good to pass up. But yeah, supposedly, if you've read the press release, Ray, Finn, and Poe Dameron get back together for Life Day. But speaking of Life Day, I heard this fascinating thing from a friend who works at Disney World Entertainment, who first of all asked me if I'd read the what is it, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, the Traveler's Guidebook, and it was like, well,
Oh,
yeah,
Cole
Dan and I,
Horton? Yeah.
yeah, by Cole Horton, and yes, yeah, Dan and I had actually, I think, reviewed it on our last show, and said, you read it, right? Yeah, like you really read it, and it's like, well, yeah. So did you notice about the holidays? And the three holidays, I guess,
That's
are
right.
Black Spire Day, Harvest Festival, and then Life Day.
Yep.
Um, it turns out the person I was talking with had just come out of the meeting for 2021 where they're locking in the holiday schedule. They're blocking out days for these holidays inside of Galaxy's Edge.
I think that's
Um,
you know what? When I read that, I had a feeling they were going to use that as a promotional for the parks, and I'm absolutely thrilled about that.
well, now again, he warned me that these are fairly loosey goosey at this point. I mean,
Sure.
obviously, given our COVID coronavirus world, it's hard to know a year from now, how if the parks will be up and operating the way they were, or whether they'll be continuing along as they are today. But evidently, should this go forward, Black Spire Day is actually going to be May 4th, as in May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
Um, Harvest Festival seems to be the one that's most slippy slidey right now.
It's a pretty ambiguous term. Like when I read the other two, it's very clear where they fit in or out of the actual mythology itself. But the other one, I thought, I'm not sure how this one fits. This maybe is something new just for this.
Well, and again, it's interesting that you say that, because that supposedly there are two schools of thought. One is that this would ideally be something that could be staged at Disney's Hollywood Studios at a time when the Magic Kingdom is doing Mickey's Not So Scary and that sort of thing. But there are several people within entertainment. It's like, look, we have this period between Halloween and Thanksgiving, where the studio, I mean, yes, they put up the holiday decorations, but it's one of these things where it's like, wouldn't this be a smarter thing to drop in there to give people an artificial reason to visit the park between Halloween and Thanksgiving? But I guess the argument against that was, among Star Wars fans, I guess Life Day is actually celebrated on November 17th. Is
There are some that mention it on social media and have some fun. I've never really done much with that, but I can tell you this, and I can promise you this:
Mhm.
if
Yep.
they put a Christmas tree in front of the Millennium Falcon uh, in Galaxy's Edge, I will probably die with a smile on my face, and a plastic surgeon will not be able to get it off.
Okay. Well, I will say this much, that in fact it's going to be kind of interesting, because I guess they have looped in the folks at Lucasfilm who do concept art for the films. But the notion is
Doug Chang,
working.
you mean?
I
Wow,
I believe that was a name that was mentioned.
that'd be amazing.
But the idea is work in the Venn diagram of, it's got to look holiday, but it's got to look authentically Star Wars. And in fact, what's kind of weird is they were supposedly inspired by what was done for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, where their holiday decorations were very, very specific for the Wizarding World. I mean, you could look at them and say, okay, holiday, but it's also, I'm in Hogwarts, or I'm in Diagon Alley. So it's the same thing. It's like, how do you do the holidays at Batu? And more particularly Black Spire Outpost. So going to be kind of interesting, because these sorts of things, these decorative elements, have to be made months and months in advance. So
And
I
there's
just
also, I'm sure, the challenge of theming in it, because if it's supposed to be canonical, which I think is going to be more and more challenging as time goes on throughout the years, personally. But they're going to have to find a logistical way or a logical way in a story to have Christmas trees and Christmas decorations and things like that. I mean, I've only seen the holiday special once, and it was when it originally aired. So, you know what? Maybe you and I, you know what we should do? We should probably watch it and do a commentary for a show in December. That might be really
oh
fun.
that's it's that's a lot of Harvey Korman.
Oh,
that
there's
that's
no such thing as too much Harvey Korman. Too much Drew Taylor. There's definitely that's the thing. Yeah,
well, there we go. Okay, that's it. Just clocking in, folks. What, we're
kind
10
of
or 12
early.
minutes in. We
Yeah.
got the Drew Carey thing. Okay. Speaking, getting back to the Disney World version of Batu, which again, you got to remember, the only reason I learned about this, because Disney World's open. The Disneyland, we're still waiting on that plan to get that park open. But Star Wars: Rise of the Resistance was not open. For at least a day last week, because the show building got hit by this amazing bolt of lightning, and that um, blew out so many systems they couldn't get the attraction up and running again till August 12th. And I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures coming out of Walt Disney World just today, but they're still having operational issues from that lightning strike.
That's pretty scary, and they had a hard enough time when things were going, on a normal schedule anyway. And so that's, I mean, that ride is so complicated and so complex and so much cutting edge stuff. So that is the
Mhm.
last thing they needed. I think we should write a petition to the universe and say, can you give Galaxy's Edge some sort of a break, please? Because it really is a wonderful place to go.
Well, and the weird thing of it is that seriously, if you look, in fact, there's the famous story of when Walt Disney was asked by Emily Bavar, I believe this was 1964, about Mr. Disney. There's this rumor about somebody buying up all this land in Central Florida, and that some people say it's the airspace industry, some say it's Ford, and there's a number of people say it's you. And he's like, "Oh, Emily, it couldn't possibly be less. Do you know how many inches of rain you get per year?" And he was able to cite the exact figure. Do you know how many lightning strike? You're the lightning strike capital of the world. And Emily walked away from the interview, and basically anybody who knows that much about Central Florida is buying land in Central Florida. And
Exactly.
yeah, so Walt himself, after all of those lawyers, working under assumed names and shell companies, and it's Walt himself who blows it. But anyway, speaking of operational issues, at least we have one good bit of good news in regard to Star Wars: Rise of the Resistance. And face it, one of the concerns ever since this attraction has first opened, it's been the whole boarding group situation, and having to link your reservation to your friends and hoping you can get into the same boarding group and on the attraction at the same time.
And you have about 10 seconds to do it in many occasions.
That you do. But just today, Disney has updated the My Disney Experience app, which will make guests, especially guests who come to the park in a larger group, make it that much easier for them to book a boarding group on Rise of the Resistance. So, for the entire party. They finally updated the app. They finally streamlined the process. So my problem is, folks, I have trouble operating a remote control. So if I were to explain this to you, you would probably get thrown out of the park. So
Were
I suggest
were you the guy that had a hard time programming his VCR back in the day?
it was always 12 o'clock. Okay, I'm sorry. Just I'm not a terribly technical guy. Brownie cameras were about as sophisticated as I could get. Did you see just this week the Coca-Cola droid carts in Galaxy's Edge? They've begun, in addition to selling the little thermal detonators filled with Coke products, they're also selling Gold Squadron Lager now.
Are they
Um,
really? I did not know that. See, this is one of the great reasons it's fun to do the show with you, because you let me know about things I hadn't heard about yet. Tell me more.
Well, basically, this was supposedly exclusive inside of Oga's Cantina. But remember, Oga's Cantina still, I mean, charming, definitely worth checking out, but still
It's
has,
great.
even under, the current operational park issues, still has capacity problems. So this was kind of a half measure to make sure that people could, also get this. So again, it's at these two carts. Mind you, it's $14 a bottle, but but you can get some Gold Squadron Lager there rather than having to wait in line forever to get into Oga's.
Is there an
And
exclusive can or anything like that, or is it just the drink itself?
the photo that I saw appears to be a fairly I mean it's a surprisingly generic can, but I guess with the Arabesh writing on the outside and that sort of thing.
Oh, that's
So
fun.
I get so um speaking of which, though, that if you and I were there in Galaxy's Edge right now, Dan, we'd probably be pouring out a Gold Squadron lager because face it, this coming week was when Star Wars Celebration was supposed to be held out in Anaheim. And it's just kind of depressing that it isn't going to happen this year. But that said, folks, Dan and I decided going into tonight's show, we weren't going to be obsessive or depressed about this. We were actually going to bury the needle in the other way, and that we were going to celebrate Star Wars Celebration. And in fact, when we get back from our break, Dan's going to talk about the 5 different times he went to Star Wars Celebration.
Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And we're back. Okay, Dan. So just to give a little background here, again, the Star Wars Celebration Anaheim was supposed to have been held August 27th through the 30th at the Anaheim Convention Center. And again, to sort of put an additional sting in here, opening night of the event, there was supposed to be the Star Wars night at Disneyland Park. On the night of the 27th, but this whole event wound up being canceled back on June 15th due to the coronavirus. And this, there have been 13 of these to date, right?
That sounds right.
Okay. First was held, according to my research, in Denver, Colorado, at the Wings Over the Rockies Museum from April 30th to May 2nd, 1999. And I have to assume the timing there was this of the initial event was to sort of help support and promote Phantom Menace.
It was to promote the Phantom Menace and create this new con. And one of the things it's the most famous for was the torrential rain was relentless, and getting into the convention itself was very, very challenging and took a long time. Many, many people were waterlogged over the experience of Star Wars Celebration 1, but people talk about it very fondly.
Okay, well, again, you always have to allow for the first when you're launching a new con. I mean, the initial D23 Expo had more than its share of issues. But again, it turned out to be a good thing. Now, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. The very first Star Wars Celebration you went to was the one in Indianapolis in 2005?
Yep, Star Wars Celebration 3. And it was the first time that George Lucas made an appearance at Celebration.
Holy cow. Okay. Now, just to be clear here, and I want to point this out, folks, that this is... Dan went to this particular Star Wars Celebration as a civilian. That he was not... the Ubermeister of all things Star Wars at that point. You were just a diehard fan going to this event. So can you talk about when you first found out about it was coming to Indianapolis?
Of course. Yeah, I knew it was coming to Indianapolis, and I wanted to go to the other two, but I just couldn't make it work time-wise. And then when I saw that it was happening, this was, of course, to promote Revenge of the Sith, which at that time I thought was going to be the last Star Wars film. Obviously, it wasn't. And so I got a ticket just for Saturday, and I talked to, and I was going to go by myself, and I found out a good friend of mine, Brian Romersberger, was going. So I called him, and we carpooled together. Had the most wonderful time, and actually that's one of the reasons I think that it inspired Coffee with Kenobi, because I would be in lines with people or walking the show floors or looking at the merchandise and just feeling so much this incredible pull to be more a part of the community, more a part of the conversation. And I would engage with people and we would talk, but it would, of course, be very, very brief. And they probably thought, well, who is this guy that's talking to me about Star Wars? I just want to be with my other friends talking about Star Wars. And I just remember thinking, there's so much more that we can do to build up this community and to continue this conversation. And I really very much want to be a part of it. And it was something that was very much in the back of my mind. But to be around all those Star Wars fans and all that new stuff, and actually, I remember seeing like a quick 10 to 15-second preview of the Anakin Obi-Wan fight on Mustafar. And you'll love and appreciate this. There were probably about 40 or 50 people standing, staring at the screen that had it. And I had my back to the screen because I didn't want it to be spoiled for me. Probably the only one in the whole place. But it was wonderful.
Dan, that is half your charm. And more to the point, I respect that much self-discipline. That's I would have sat there and watched it several times. So okay, looking for nuance.
And this was before cell phones were a thing, which makes me sound
that's right,
older. Yeah. But I'm sure that would have been all over social media.
Okay. And now where was this held in Indianapolis?
At the Indianapolis Convention Center, like right downtown in Indianapolis. It's huge. In fact, Indiana Comic-Con last year, every year is held in that same place. It's hard to imagine. I think it's too small for Celebration now. But at the time, it was great. I remember meeting Tamira Morrison and Amy Allen, who plays Ayla Secura. I remember seeing Kenny Baker there, Ray Park. There were quite a few Star Wars celebrities there, and it was very, very distinct. Like, here's the autograph area, here's the show floor, here's where the panels are. And I didn't even think I really realized the power and the impact of panels, so I didn't attend any of them. I just walked around the show floor for hours and hours and hours, and I thought it was incredible. Little did I know that one day is not enough to experience Celebration, but at the time, it certainly wet my whistle.
Well, okay, so now let's jump ahead 10 years to your next Star Wars Celebration. In fact, this is a very special Star Wars Celebration for me personally, the one that happened in Anaheim, April 16th through the 19th, 2015, because this is the first time you and I met in person.
That's right. We had done a podcast, I don't know, a few months before that, perhaps. You and Len came on an early iteration of Coffee with Kenobi, and Coffee with Kenobi was the very first show to ever be on Lucasfilm's Star Wars Celebration podcast stage. And I had let you know about that, I think, maybe either email or maybe when you were on the show. And I looked up and I saw your happy, smiling face there, and I remember feeling very honored that you were there. Leland Chi was there. We had a packed house. We even had a line going out the door, which I thought was really wonderful.
In fact, that I actually had to wait a bit before I could get into the room. But yeah, that was my first experience as well, or so my first experience with Star Wars Celebration. And I mean, I'd done Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con, and I think at that point there had been one or two D23 expos, but I have to tell you, the vibe at Star Wars Celebration was so different. It's hard to explain. That I mean, you've done the other cons, so you know how that level of anxiety and stress, that you can sometimes get at an event like that, or more to the point, the vibe you can get off of other people at an event like that, and Star Wars Celebration just buries the needle in the other direction for some reason.
It does.
Why is that exactly?
Ironically, when I went to San Diego Comic-Con a couple of years ago, on preview night, I had just gotten done. I went across the street and walked into my hotel. As soon as I walk in the lobby, I see Dave Filoni. And I walk over to the I smile, but I don't bother him. And I go to the elevator, open the door, I walk in, and I'm getting ready to go in. All of a sudden, this guy walks in the elevator, and it was Dave Filoni. And so I asked him what made this different, San Diego Comic-Con, different from Star Wars Celebration. He said, well, Comic-Con is fun, but you've got all these different fans and atmospheres and just sort of a different cultural vibe, as you said. He said, but Star Wars Celebration is different because everybody's there for the same thing, and everybody can really let their hair down and be Star Wars fans. And I think that is a great way to describe it. There's just an electricity there because I think Star Wars is at its best when there's a lull between movies or conventions, and people are just so excited and rabid. And I know we're going to talk about Celebration Chicago in a little bit, but I feel like there's just not a lot of negativity. It's just enjoyment and embracing the fandom and the mythology, and it's very special. And they all do have like D23 has a different feel. They all have different feels, but Celebration is very unique.
No, I agree. I agree. But at the same time, I mean, of the 2015 event, or I mean, obviously, it's got to have been a thrill to be the first podcast on the podcast stage there. But was there anything else you remembered from that year's event, or?
Oh yeah, I remember a ton of things. Well, for one thing, literally right before the podcast stage, they dropped the trailer for The Force Awakens where
That's right.
Harrison famously said, "Chewie, we're home." The place erupted, and we were running up to the stage because we had maybe about 10 minutes before it started.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my co-host at the time, Corey Clubb, asking me about the trailer. And I said, "Dude, we got to get to the show. We'll talk about it on the stage." And that's exactly what we did. And then there was, we went over to Disneyland, just meeting. We met, that was when there's so many podcasts first started. So we got to meet
Mm-hmm.
so many different podcasts. And I got to meet Vanessa Marshall for the first time. And I got to interview Freddie Prinze Jr. face to face for like a special thing. And that was just an incredible, incredible experience because there were only a handful of us. Went to a private room. That was in Star Wars Rebels had this wonderful thing, and that was where a kid came on stage, and Filoni whispered to the young man, or actually the young lady, who the voice of Chopper was, and he says he legitimately told her who it was, and of course we didn't know for years that it was actually him, but I believe that he did that, and we met Dave there as well, going
Mm-hmm.
around those show floors. It was just an incredible experience, just unlike anything else, and just the excitement of The Force Awakens. No one knew about it yet, but they had all the costumes on display. Of course, the cast was there, and Anthony Breznican hosted that premiere panel for that. It was magic, really was.
I agree. I agree. And I remember being in the hall for that. And you're right. The reaction there, though also the Rogue One trailer or the teaser also got a huge response.
Yeah, that and they
Um,
literally was something they didn't even use in the movie. It was just like
n-
a shot of
no,
the Death
that's
Star being
exactly.
built.
Just radio traffic, and then that image of like what is it, the Death Star looming over like a jungle planet. And you're right, nothing that ever actually showed up in the film.
And isn't
But
that also where we first kind of got the idea that Josh Trank was not going to be working on a Star Wars film?
yeah, yeah, he had a cold or something to that
That's right.
effect.
That's right.
Though I want to double back on to the Force Awakens panel, because honestly, first of all, the cast really, uh, you got great energy off the cast because they seemed as excited to be in front of the fans as the fans seems to be seeing them. But can you talk about how the audience first reacted when they saw BB-8 in person?
It was insane because the physics of it was unlike anything we had seen before. Of course, you've seen Astromech and R2D2 and the droid builders, all the incredible work that they do. But
Yep.
to see a spherical droid roll out, seemingly on its own power, its own volition,
Hmm.
people lost their minds.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it was kind of a rock star moment,
It really
and
was.
and somewhere, a Disney consumer product executive smiled. It's like, oh, my Christmas bonus.
That's true.
Um, Now, I have to ask though, because it's kind of face it, half the fun of Star Wars Celebration with the Anaheim Convention Center is it's literally across the street from Disneyland. So that getting back and forth to the park and having fun, doing Star Tours and that sort of thing, relatively easy. Now to jump ahead to 2017 to Star Wars Celebration Orlando, that's an entirely different animal because the Anaheim Convention Center, a giant, huge, monstrous facility, is off of I Drive. It's actually closer to Universal than it is to Disney. So, what was that one like for you?
So that one was a little bit different. It would probably be my least favorite celebration that I've ever attended because I
Really?
felt like the panels were a little tricky to get into.
Mhm.
They had very specific guidelines about what time You could actually get in line, and you weren't allowed to wait overnight. And Corey and I woke up at 4 in the morning. There had already been people there overnight that didn't enforce any guidelines that they had. That happened the entire weekend. That was very frustrating. It was almost impossible to get into the gift shop. There were certainly a lot of challenges for that. But the plus side was they had Star Wars Galactic Nights on April 14th. And that was maybe one of the best Disney experiences at a theme park that I've ever had, because it was closed off for the private event. There was actually a red carpet going all the way down Hollywood Boulevard. They had different Star Wars kiosks for very unique photo opportunities, such as being in the trash compactor, an actual 1:1 scale, the Emperor's Throne, all kinds of things like that. Very exclusive merchandise, which I'm a big fan of. And I just walked around with my good friends that I don't always get to see very much because they're in different parts of the world. And it was just amazing. You went on the rock and roller coaster, and it was John Williams music. It wasn't Aerosmith. And the lights were changed to reflect a kind of a different perspective. And it was absolutely tremendous. The community feeling there was so palpable and just so wonderful.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, is this when they did the Star Wars specific version of the Indiana Jones stunt show?
No,
or-
that was back when they had Star Wars Celebration in Orlando the previous time. Yes.
Okay, 'cause I just recently that somebody put that up on YouTube, and it was the first time I got to see that, and
It's great.
that was quite clever.
Oh, so fun.
But let's see. And again, out ahead of tonight, I tried to do some research about the Orlando version, and I have to admit, going down into the main convention, so was that the show floor where you went under the giant Death Star, or where was that?
Well, the show floor had like a big TIE fighter, and that's where the Star Wars show was. Another reason that should stand out to people is Lucas was there and Harrison Ford, who both showed up on the Star Wars show stage. Literally 2 minutes after I was talking to Andy Gutierrez, and I walked away, and then I heard all this screaming. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. Well, it was only Harrison Ford and George Lucas walking out 2 steps before I was, but don't worry, I eventually got to meet him later.
Yeah, that's true.
Ryan Johnson was there, and one of the mornings, the morning of the Last Jedi panel, he went down and he shook hands and took pictures with every single person in line. And not only does he a genius and incredible filmmaker, but the guy is an absolute treasure.
It's so interesting you say that, because one of the things I almost talked about again, Dave Filoni out doing promotion for for the Mandalorian, did this, talking about the prep, getting ready, because he'd never shot live action before, and it was Ryan Johnson. It's like, well, look, come down to the set, and suddenly he's sitting next to the camera with Ryan Johnson and his director of photography, and he's explaining to Dave, it's like, okay, this is why we're positioning the camera this way. This is why we're doing these lights, and he literally trained him in the art of directing.
I didn't know that. That is wonderful.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a hell of a guy.
He is.
Oh, was there anything else in particular that stuck, or leaped out for you for the Orlando?
Well, it just all of the big thing was Galactic Nights, and even though there was a lot of frustration with the panels and getting into the show floor or getting into the arena itself, there was just a lot of people that were just very excited to celebrate Star Wars. I was able to meet a number of authors that I never met before. Got to talk with Leland and Pablo and Matt Martin quite a bit, and it was just a fun experience. But it wasn't as exciting as Celebration Anaheim, but it did get better. The one we're about to talk about.
Well, yes, that's jumping ahead now to Star Wars Celebration in Chicago, and again, once again in April. This time, April 11th to the 15th, 2019. And to set the stage here, now, what was kind of cool about this one is you actually were able to commute to this one, right? You took the train into Chicago.
That's right. Chicago's about 2 hours and 15 minutes from where I live, so I saved quite a bit of money on airfare. And yeah, we just took the train up, and that was pretty great because it was in very much sort of in my backyard. I'm very familiar with Chicago. I've been there quite a bit. My oldest
Mhm.
goes to college there, film school, and it was cool. That was also the first celebration. I was on a panel at Celebration Orlando. I guess I should point that out. That was the first time I was ever on a Celebration panel. It was for StarWars.com writers. But for
Mhm.
Celebration Chicago, I was on three panels if you include the podcast stage. I was on covering the media. First,
Mhm.
Star Wars announced something that you were going to be on, but you weren't able to make it. So that's actually where
Yeah,
I
but
met Drew
it's
Taylor for the
still
first time.
yeah. Well, that's true. And Drew
And
was kind enough to fill in for me. They flew out to be there with you at McCormick Place. Is that right? Or
McCormick Place, a huge place, and
Mhm.
that was incredible fun. And Clayton Sandell, Anthony Bresnikan, Amy Rochelle also on that. And then Clayton had to leave early. He and I were going to do a panel on the mythology of Star Wars in front of and behind the camera, and then he had to go
Mhm.
cover something for ABC. So I ended up doing that solo, and that is very memorable to me because it was the last panel of the convention. I
Mhm.
legitimately thought I was going to walk in the room and see about 15 people. There were over 400. It was packed. And at the very last minute, I do this with teaching too. I suddenly thought,
Mhm.
you know what? I'm going to do something completely different from what I had planned. And I just got up there and I talked and I taught the room like I would an opening mythology class.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I felt like I was a different person at that time. I love presenting, but I just felt like I was transported to another place. It was just so fun and so powerful. And one of the reasons it inspired me to do danzymedia.com because I just thought, I love this presenting. I need to do much, much more of this.
Well, and again, for friends who attended that, it talked about how you were kind of on fire, just so, very much in the moment, and
That's kind of you to
uh,
say.
yeah, and folks, if want kind of a taste of that, we've talked about this in previous shows, but your teaching Star Wars series over at StarWars.com. In fact, that I just checked before we did the show here, and there was for lack of a better term, a predecessor studying Skywalkers. Was that
Yeah,
uh, what was that?
that was one of my first things that I ever did for StarWars.com when I first made a pitch to Lucasfilm that I was a teacher and I used Star Wars in the classroom and they loved it. They
Hmm.
ran with it and that eventually led to a pretty regular column for quite a while.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was my first foray into a larger world with StarWars.com.
Well, again, I know I keep beating this same drum, but now, especially given between teaching Star Wars and studying Skywalkers, there's more than enough material here for a book, Dan. I
Hey,
mean,
I'm game. I love it.
okay, okay. That and perhaps, if you get it together, you can have the book ready in time for August 2022, which is when Star Wars Celebration is now scheduled to be held at the Anaheim Convention Center. The very next one of those.
That's right.
Uh and again, they moved the date to line up with the new Star Wars film. Is that correct? Or
Well, that was originally the case, but now they put that film back another year. So there won't be a film to sort of be a tent pole to help promote.
right?
So that's
Dang
interesting. I hope that doesn't affect Star Wars Celebration. I mean, of course, a lot of this, and I don't think that it will because they tried to pick a time where it didn't compete with the D23 Expo.
Okay, because I literally just updated yesterday my multi-year film schedule to after every release date for every film known to man has changed.
Yeah,
Just plugging those all in there, and you're right that they now alternate with there are going to be 5 Avatar movies.
I
I'm
know.
I'm I'm sorry. I know I've said this before. That's a lot of blue people.
That is.
Uh, and even the Smurfs can't. I don't think they petered out at 3 films. Um, oh well. Anyway, Dan, thank you so much for talking about Star Wars Celebration. I mean, it's still sad that we don't get to do it next week. But on the other hand, to have you talk about what made the earlier one special and For me, that it makes me look forward to August of 2022, which, given the way my life is working now, that's 5 minutes from now, folks.
Oh yeah.
You'll turn around and it'll be right here, and hopefully we'll by then we'll have a better handle on COVID, and actually be able to enjoy ourselves there. But
And go to the Star Wars Disneyland After Dark Star Wars night that you and I have been looking forward to for so long, and it really needs to be. Thank you for asking me about a lot of the celebration stuff. It can't go unnoticed that the celebration is it just highlights and spotlights this wonderful community of Star Wars
Mhm.
fans who are passionate, energetic, and friendly. You meet people that you talk with online over the years, and they become very close friends. I of course I tease about Drew pretty regularly, but that was the way he and I actually met face to face. We hung out at a couple of junket
Mhm.
things, and gosh, we're friends for life. And I have you to thank for that because you introduced us. So I appreciate that.
Well, don't thank me yet.
That's true. I guess I could reserve the right to change my mind.
I love Drew, but yeah, okay. Well, anyway, that people are looking. People who didn't get to go to Star Wars Celebration are looking for Star Wars related things to sort of fill the gap here. So can you talk about what's been going on with Coffee with Kenobi lately, and more to the point, what's going on with your Patreon project?
Of course, thank you. Yeah, well, of course, we had Ahmed Best, and then we had Ian Desher, author of the William Shakespeare Star Wars series. Last
Mhm.
week we had George Mann, who does the Star Wars mythology books, and he's got a new book out as sort of a horror collection of short stories, Star Wars related. That was fun. And actually, the show that's coming out this week is also a celebration show where myself and two of my good friends talked about the top 5 things we are most disappointed that we won't get to experience this year at Celebration. But very much like our show today, looking at Lucasfilm, it was kind of a
Mhm.
love fest and a celebration of what we love. It got me much, much more excited about the one in 2022 than I was before. A good chance to spotlight a lot of the great things that can happen there. It's so much fun. And then on our Patreon page, we sort of rebranded it. Now I refer to it as the CWK Alliance because I feel like Star Wars fans are very much united in their drive and their passion and their love of this galaxy far, far away. So I thought, we're part of an alliance. Let's call it the CWK Alliance. So on the CWK Alliance, you can hear CWK Per, which is our exclusive weekly podcast, and there's also a video option for it as well. And last week we did top 5 favorite obscure superheroes from Marvel and DC. We talk about very, very deep cuts. That was fun. And then this weekend coming up, it's going to be top 5 favorite snacks, which is very much a silly topic, but we had a blast.
Okay. Well, all right. That sounds. That'll sort of fill the gap, so to speak.
That's right.
For those of us who are, just we're looking forward to that. 3 or 4 days of Star Wars goodness. But if you need something other than Star Wars, over at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, we have, of course, Disney News with Glenn Testa. Drew Taylor and I are going to be recording a new fine tuning tomorrow or Friday. I forget which. Let's see. We also have, I just recorded a brand new Marvel Us Disney with Aaron Adams earlier this evening. And in a day or so, I'm going to be doing a new Universal joint with Dustin Fuse, and Michelle Valladolid and I are going to be looking at Disney merch with a new episode of I Want That, which, again, if all had gone according to plan, we would have been talking about new Star Wars merch. But hey, you got to roll with the punches, folks. And speaking of rolling, that if you folks could roll on over to iTunes and rate and recommend not only the podcast you're listening to now, looking at Lucasfilm, but also Coffee with Kenobi, that would be incredibly helpful to Dan and I. Likewise, if you really, really, really like what you heard tonight, if you get over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be helpful. And again, Dan, I so enjoy what you do on social media. So I want to make sure that other people can check it out. So where can they find you? Twitter, Instagram, the like?
Sure. Well, for me personally, it's at Mr. Zehr, Mrzehr. And for the show, Coffee with Kenobi, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have a YouTube channel that I'd love for you to subscribe to, and then you can follow us on Pinterest, which actually has a massive following, probably our biggest one, surprisingly.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool. On the other hand, Jim Hill Media, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram and over on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. Though I will mention that Pinterest thing to Nancy, and we'll see if we can come join the party over there. Anyway, folks, again, wanted to thank you for joining Dan and I tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show. And we'll be back in 2 weeks or so with a brand new episode of Looking at Lucasfilm. So till then, take care.